What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Arrow Season 6, Episode 22, titled The Ties That Bind, which is also the penultimate episode of the season. And for some reason, this episode has, amazing reviews right now on IMDb. I think it's 9 out of 10, or 9.8 out of 10, which is the highest rated Arrow episode right now. I'm sure it's going to get lower, but right now it's the highest rated episode, which I don't really get. This isn't a great episode. I think it's not a bad episode either, but it's definitely not a great episode. This episode broke the 9 out of 10 winning streak Arrow has had for the last 5 episodes, from episodes 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, all above 9 out of 10, or I think the lowest one was 9.1 out of 10, but all of them above 9 out of 10, which is a pretty crazy streak that Arrow had for a while there, for over a month. But now the streak is broken with this episode because there are a lot of things in this episode that I really didn't like, and also a lot of things I did like. So it's not a bad episode per se, it's just not a great episode either. So first thing I want to talk about the episode, and it's like the beginning scene, one of the beginning scenes in the episode, and it's actually really great. It's probably my favorite part of the episode. It's done so well. It's a scene where everybody on Team Arrow and their families is being attacked by Ricardo Diaz's men. So you see Oliver and William and Felicity having a meal, and then they're just suddenly attacked after Anatoly calls them, and then it cuts to every other team member of Team Arrow, or the old Team Arrow, because they're not really a team anymore, but they are in this episode, which is cool. But you see Renee being attacked while he's watching a game with his daughter, and then you see Curtis being attacked when he's at his house with his boyfriend, and you see Dinah being attacked when she's the Black Canary. So I really liked how they cut between every one of these members of Team Arrow, seeing them attacked by Ricardo Diaz, and the fight scenes that followed were awesome. It's the best part about this whole thing is that it's really intense. The way, like I said, they cut between every single member of Team Arrow being attacked. It's so intense the way they cut it, and the fight scenes are great. Everything about this scene is really great. I'm not saying it goes downhill from there, but it doesn't get as good as that for the rest of the episode. So now I'm going to get to what I didn't like about the episode, and you guys could probably see this coming, and the main thing I didn't like about this episode was Felicity, and she has not been a problem for me ever since, episode 9 or 10, maybe, because, at the beginning, the first half of the season, there were, 2 episodes where she was really annoying, but ever since then, she's been fine. She's been in the background where she should be, and she's fine, whatever. But in this episode, she comes to the forefront, and I keep on saying this, or I haven't said it in a while because she hasn't been in the forefront in a while, but I say this every time. It makes the episode so much worse when she's in the forefront of the episode. Take episode 4, I think it was 4, where she was the forefront of the episode 9. Both those episodes were trash episodes, and the main reason that they were, one of the main reasons, is because of Felicity's main role in the episode. Now, she wasn't, the main character in this episode, because that was obviously Oliver, and the main villain was Diaz, obviously, but she had such a prominent role that it really affected the episode in general. She was annoying. When she has this prominent role, when she has more screen time than usual, she does become annoying. It seems like that's just an automatic thing that happens, and I just did not like it. The scene, there's this one fight scene where she goes into the CCPD, or not CCPD, the SCPD, and you see this fight scene, you see the background, it looks pretty awesome, but the camera is following Felicity, which is something I hate, and it's a great analogy for seasons like Arrow Season 4, where you have something interesting happening in the background, but the camera follows Felicity, which I just came up with that analogy on the spot, but it's a pretty amazing analogy, but I just didn't like this fight scene where it's following Felicity instead of following the interesting thing, which is in the background where Team Arrow is fighting Ricardo Diaz and his men. In the episode in general, the whole storyline of Felicity and Oliver, their tension, because Felicity wants to go out into the field for some reason, and Oliver is worried about her. This tension was, it was unnecessary. It was bad in general. It did not help the episode. It made it worse, and that's my main problem with the episode. Felicity being the forefront and her tension with Oliver this late in the season, it doesn't work, and it really, not only does it not work, but it's just so unnecessary, and it just did not need to be there, so that really drags down the episode. So back to things that I did like about this episode. Ricardo Diaz was pretty awesome in this episode. There's this one scene where he's talking to the, I think third to last member of the Quadrant, because he killed all the rest. Well, I think he killed only one of them. There are only 4 members. But I don't remember her name, but there's a scene where he is just talking to her. She's complaining about something, and then you don't even notice it. A millisecond later, her neck is sliced open. It comes out of nowhere. You barely see him doing that, which is a pretty big surprise to me and a pretty great moment. And in general, he was pretty intense and pretty awesome in this episode. There were some moments that I didn't like. For instance, him being tricked by Anatoly feels like it really undermines him as a character. It makes him look kind of stupid to blindly trust Anatoly at this point, and I don't see a reason why he wouldn't trust Anatoly, but just to see Anatoly so easily trick him kind of undermines him as a villain, in my opinion. It makes him look kind of stupid, which is what we've been taught he's not stupid. We've been taught he's smart enough to trick everybody to thinking that he's not real, and smart enough to take over the city. So to see him being so easily duped by Anatoly is kind of undermines him as a character, like I said. But everything else in this episode from him was definitely great. I don't really think there were any amazing fight scenes from him, but I don't think there were any amazing, great fight scenes from him in the entire season, so I can't really expect that, even though I should. But I don't expect that, so I didn't really notice. But I don't think there were any great fight scenes from him. If there were, then either I don't remember it that well, or the camera was focusing on Oliver and Felicity's tension, which I think it was. There was this other fight scene where Team Arrow was out fighting Ricardo Diaz's men, and it was mainly focusing on what was going on inside with decrypting that file and Oliver and Felicity thing. So that whole scene, the whole plot, for some reason they focused on it so much that, like I said, it really made the episode worse, along with Diaz being tricked by Anatoly. Those are really the only two things I didn't like about this episode. Everything else was pretty great. For instance, seeing Team Arrow working together again was pretty cool, just because the whole civil war that happened back earlier this season, it was never called that. It was basically called just a collision course. That was not done well. It was something I was excited for, but it wasn't executed well at all. So at the end, I didn't really care about the problems. I didn't really want them to break up at the end. I did want the team to get smaller, just specifically just Green Arrow, Black Canary, and if Arsenal comes back like he does, like he will in Season 7, him as well. That sounds like a pretty great Team Arrow, but the way it is right now, it would be better if they went back together, and they were working together again in this episode. I just wish we would have seen more of that, because like I said, whenever we saw them working together, I mean, we didn't see much of it, but whenever we saw them working together, it was focusing on other things. It was focusing on Oliver Felicity's tension. It was focusing on, well, that was the only scene. There wasn't another thing without the rest of Team Arrow, without the new recruits or the original or the new Team Arrow, where it was focusing on Felicity, like I said earlier. But I just wish we would have seen more of Team Arrow working together in this episode, hopefully, and we will probably get more of it in the next episode. In this episode, however, it was still really cool seeing them work together, along with Oliver working with Anatoly, despite the fact that the way it was handled with Diaz believing Anatoly wasn't very great. And then the episode ends with Oliver going to Samandra Watson, who appeared 4 other times this season, to ask for help with Ricardo Diaz. I don't know how she would help. I think she probably has a lot of agents to help, and that will help. I'm saying the word help a lot, but that's what's going on here. So I really like the scene where he's like, I am the Green Arrow, just because of the parallel of how he said that before in the past in the Green Arrow suit. Now he's saying it without the Green Arrow suit to Watson, and then she's like, the truth will set you free. So that whole arc of Samandra Watson really trying to get Oliver to admit he's the Green Arrow, really trying to persecute him for it, and then the trial in the last episode, and then this episode with Oliver admitting it to her. It is a cool arc, or a cycle, or just storyline they did here. And then Oliver asking for Watson's help is a cool way, or a pretty great way to end this episode. And the second thing that she's asking for is probably to put Oliver behind bars, or more likely for Oliver to admit to the public that he's the Green Arrow, which will probably be to change the status quo of the show forever. Just because in the next season, a big thing they're going to deal with is probably Oliver's identity being out to the public as the Green Arrow, similar to what they did on Smallville. I don't really remember how they did it. I haven't watched that show in such a long time. But I do remember there was an episode where Oliver Queen admitted to the public that he was the Green Arrow, or vice versa, Green Arrow admitted he's Oliver Queen. So I think that's what's going to happen in the next episode, and I definitely think that's the second thing that Samantha Watson wants from Oliver. Well, I guess the two things are the same. One is to admit it to her, and the other thing is to admit it to everyone, but maybe it's something else. There's really nothing else I could think of. Like, either he admits it or he's just put in jail, but I think like they could just do that by having you admit it. I don't really know, but I think that it's most likely him admitting to the public and or not admitting, but revealing his identity to the public, which is something that will really affect Season 7's storyline and will be a major player or major plot line in the next season. In conclusion, however, this episode definitely broke the streak of Arrow's 5 episode in a row having over 9 out of 10, because this episode's score is lower than that, because there were things in this episode that I really didn't like. For instance, like I said, Felicity was really annoying in this episode just because she had a major role, and then Diaz believing that Anatoly was loyal to him, and also the Oliver and Felicity tension was unnecessary and annoying. Those are the things I didn't like about the episode. Really dragged down the score, but everything else in this episode was mostly great. The scene at the beginning was amazing, where Team Arrow is being attacked, and Ricardo Diaz, everything outside of Anatoly. His storyline with him, that he was great in the episode, and Team Arrow working together, Oliver working with Anatoly again, and Oliver going to Watson for help. All of that was great. It's just the Felicity and Diaz/Anatoly thing that really bogged down the score of the episode. So I'll give this episode an 8.4 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter for better updates on my videos, as well as daily polls on the Arrowverse. And thanks for watching.